favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. So we'll waive that, but any comments on the minutes?
No.
All right. So moving into, tenant comments, and as always, appreciate having Cindy and Wendy here, and any relatively quick comments for the group?
Cindy was first.
There we go.
Yeah, Scott, what's up with that, Scott? Anyway, yeah, I wanted to loop back, Rick, I know Rick's on the call, on the Zoom, to Rick and ask again about this utility allowance. Back after it was mentioned, we were all given, all the tenants, I believe, were given forms to fill out to, as a release to Eversource for our gas and electric bill accounts. And we were asked to provide a copy to Amy, which I did. And so now I'm wondering, is that going to offset my rent? And is that retro? Because when I moved in 2021, the next year my rent went up 8%. And as I said before, my rent exactly went up 8%. There was no increase in the utility allowance and it didn't offset it. Then the next year it was 3%. Again, exactly went up 3%. No increase in the utility allowance, no offset. So this year is going to be 5%. I want to know, is that utility allowance, has that gone up? And can I expect it to lower my rent? So it doesn't just go up exactly 5%. And I think it would be great if I could have a breakdown of it. I'd like to see the rent and what the breakdown is. So that's.
I think for the meeting, we'll go ahead and let's treat this as a general concept. And obviously we got to get to, Cindy's direct comments, and Chandrita can get to that. But as a general sort of meeting type item. So how do we, I still always remain a little bit confused under the utility allowance, and does that come off of what the SMIs are, or is it, how that gets calculated, and just making sure that we've got the right process in place for making sure everyone's getting treated fairly?
Yeah, so I can answer the question. So the way the utility allowances work is it's typically every 3 to 5 years, usually every 3 years, you do a reset of the utility allowance. And so what we do is we go out and we request that the access to the account, like we did with you, Cindy, of everybody in the property. And then we compile all that information into a spreadsheet. And then based upon the cost of utilities for the unit types, meaning 1, 2, 3 bedroom, across the universe of those unit types in the development, you come up with effectively an average utility cost per unit type. And then going forward, that utility allowance adjusts based on that historical data. So it changes periodically. And then when you are in a tax credit unit, meaning no other subsidy associated with it, yes, the amount of the utility allowance gets subtracted from the maximum, the maximum charged rent. So the rent does adjust based on the amount of the utility allowance. So in theory, as time goes on, if utility costs increase, utility allowance increases and is subtracted from the rent. But of course, rent increases over time as well. So it just becomes relative as time goes on. But yes, it does result in an adjustment of the rent.
But that adjustment happens every 3 to 5 years. So it's not an annual thing. It's in every 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
We read that it's average with stuff. So like last year's increase in Eversource, that didn't affect anything going down, but it will affect things once we reset this next time.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not, it would reset when I sign my next lease, so it wouldn't be retro for me if you
Correct.
guys figure that. Okay.
Correct. It's not a retroactive adjustment. It's a going forward adjustment. Okay.
And then also, can I see a breakdown of that? Is that, I want to see what that is exactly. What allowance are we all getting? I mean, this is a general question and that affects everybody on the property. So
yeah, you're getting an allowance based on the cost of the utilities that you pay. And so it varies unit to unit because people will use electricity at varying amounts over the course of a year. So we take all of the units and we take 12 months of data for every unit, and we compile all of those costs, because you'll have someone that's a very light user versus someone that's a very heavy user, and that's all aggregated together and then averaged, and that becomes the new utility allowance.
Right. Well, when my lease renews, will I see that? Can I see that figure? Can we see a breakdown of that? I would like to see a breakdown of it. So if my rent is, whatever, I mean, if you charge 5% on top of what I'm paying right now, and I see that amount, then you subtract out that utility allowance. And then that's the rent that I pay.
Correct.
And so can I see those amounts? Because when I get a copy of my lease.
Yes. Well, I mean, you see the amounts by virtue of the utility allowance. That is the amount. And so if what
I'm
you're
just getting
asking
a
is you want to
total.
see the utility allowance amounts, that's what we give you. And that's what we subtract. If you want to see how we arrive at the utility allowance, you want to look at the spreadsheet with the data of all the units.
No, I don't want to see that. I
That's-
don't want to see that. If I pay X number, if I paid like $1,000 a month in rent, and your utility allowance for 1 bedrooms is $200, that equals I pay $800 a month. That's right. That's the aggregate. So
Correct.
that's what I want to see. I don't want to see, of course, I don't want to see anybody's individual electric bills or gas bills.
Yeah, well, that's when you re-sign the lease, that's the information that's provided to you. It's the rent, the utility allowance, and then the amount that you pay.
Okay, because I haven't had a copy of my lease in quite a number of years, so that'll be good. I'd like that. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see a copy and also see that. I would. So that would be great.
Sure.
Well, that was a good question, just for a quick briefing for all of us as to the utility allowance. So thank you, Cindy. And again, we'll get on with your item. All right, and Wendy, any quick comments?
When you calculate the utility allowance, and does all the units get readjusted the same year? So if you come in at year 2 of the 3 to 5 year cycle, you're going to be at whatever was determined.
Correct.
A year or two before you moved in.
It's done property-wide all at once, yes.
Okay.
Oh, and then I have another quick question. Is there a cap? Is there a cap on a 1 bedroom in New Canaan?
On what?
On the rent?
Yes. Yes, there's a maximum rent that can be charged. It's a statewide cap, not a New Canaan cap.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's really interesting.
And you are under the cap.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Ray.
Just so you don't want the cap, because you'd be paying even more.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate all that. That's really great information. Thanks a lot.
Sure.
You. All right, Wendy.
Hi. Yes. Well, it's sort of only because Cindy brought it up. Are the mill apartments different from phase 1 and phase 2? Or 1 bedroom here, the whole building style is different from one to the other. So is mill taken as a different thing, or it's in
utility,
the
I believe,
1 bedroom bucket?
I believe for utility allowance, well, actually, I shouldn't even answer. So do we treat the utility allowance different in each of the phases, or?
No, I
think
just
because the building construction is different. No.
No.
So I'm sorry, Nick.
No, we aggregate them all, because if you start to parse it out, you wind up with 3 different utility allowances across 3 different types of units, and then you have to parse it out even further by square footage of the different style of units, and it gets to a point where it's unmanageable, and the differential is negligible, really, between the different units. So no, we don't make a distinction,
because I don't think it is, just in terms of like the particular building I'm in. I know the outside apartments use more fuel than the interior ones. Like Bernie's got it good. He's got insulation from top and side.
Yeah, but
And
it would be
there are 4
impossible.
apartments that don't, so,
It would be an unmanageable exercise to try and differentiate, for example, between the amount
Yeah.
of electricity an interior unit is using versus an exterior, or the amount
yeah,
of gas and interiors. We'd wind up with 113 different utility allowances when you got done with it
yeah.
all. Because then you
Well,
could
I
make
mean,
the argument about it's different on the floors. The first floor is going to use more than the third floor, and
right,
you know,
yeah. But, yeah, basically the construct, so that you're answering the question. And, oh, so I don't think the utility allowance was because I just re-upped, and I don't think the change was made. So would it be the next time my rent comes up that I might get this allowance? And, you know, because everyone comes in at different times. So if I
yeah,
did mine,
so I don't know where we are in the collection of the data. Alec, do you know where we are in the collection of the data for that?
We have most of the tenants' information right now. I think I have to get a list of units that still need to provide it. And I can get that from Amy, but I need to tell her what we're missing. Or she can tell me what we're missing. But I'm in the middle of going through and collecting all the information over the 12 months for all of the units. I'm all the way through all the ones that we have. I'm all the way through the electrical, and then I'm about halfway through the gas. And then after I was done with that exercise, I'm gonna go back through and just check off who needs to provide the sheet that we gave them, or if we need to give them another one.
Yeah, so that would be your answer, Wendy, is that we haven't actually compiled all of the data yet
right.
to make the adjustment. So that would be why you
So-
didn't have an adjustment.
So, oh, well, no, that I understand. And now it does sound like it's even further down the road. So
quick comment,
I
please.
could,
The
Uh-huh.
utilities always go up in price, so not get a low rent because there's an allowance. It's already calculated. You're not going to get low rents because all the utilities, gas, electricity keep going up.
hmm
Think of that.
Oh, yeah, no, I know that.
So that,
But like other,
what are we arguing
I'm just
about?
saying I've done my rent for this year and got the 5% increase, but sounds like I may only get this new allowance by the next time I redo my rent. And
Yes.
people who renew in June or July may get the benefit, if there is one, of the new thing.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
I just get to pay the rent. That's okay. And my main thing was it's about that time for our lovely landscapers to come. So, and I think it was Rick that mentioned doing some lawn work, but I just don't think that's a possibility with this company if we're still using the same one. Because on the hillsides, they've been using weed whackers, and they've gone all the way down to the dirt. So that doesn't help. And a lot of the property doesn't get anything but rain. And there were also last year in between the entrance and exit, there were a whole bunch of maybe 6 or 8 bushes that are out just behind the wall that were really badly trimmed back, I think, before. And they were barely alive last year. So that's just what's there. And basically last year the landscapers clear cut anything up to the fence lines, and they trimmed evergreen trees up where their branches were dead, and then they started putting mulch under trees that just should have been left alone. So they're sort of, I understand they need to keep busy during the seasons, but they did an awful lot. And
So who does,
a little,
so Rick or Chandrita or Alex, so who does go ahead and review with the landscapers what their scope of work is, and do we have that set up and we feeling good about things, or?
Yeah, we're gonna start taking proposals. Love Your Home is the company that we've used the past several seasons. And you know, the site guys will usually review with them, you know, the scope of work is just a written scope of work, but anything specific on the property, we would have the site guys do that. So I took a couple of notes here, and I'll make a note to Gunnar and Geo to review that stuff with whomever we choose. I'm gonna assume it's gonna be Love Your Home again. They've
Mhm.
been the most competitive, but whoever it winds up being, I'll make sure that they review that stuff on site.
Yeah, and just an emphasis again on not blowing into the buildings,
Yeah,
which
I
is
know we did discuss
it's
that with them
so
last year.
hard. Yeah, but it needs to be reinforced, or
Yeah.
just at
Spanish
the
and
beginning
English.
of the season.
Yeah.
So I think that's it
Okay.
for me.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
much. All right, let's go ahead and get into management reports.
Okay, I don't see Amy on the call, so I'll run through her report. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 vacancies. You know, a couple of them been hampered by the elevator, which had yet another issue, which we
Oh,
had to spend
geez.
another $2,000 on. It's just forever a problem, it seems. But I think we've resolved all the elevator issues, so hopefully that vacancy list will drop down by 2 to only 2. And I see she's got a couple of people lined up trying to get, you know, various income information and all the things that we have to go through and hoops we have to jump through to get tenants in. Accounts receivable, we did a purging, if you will, of the accounts receivable report, which if you want to go into detail, we can do that in executive. But we did a purging of what we consider to be bad debts and are writing them off so that we have an AR report that is legitimate in terms of collectability. So that was submitted, and again, if you want to go through that in detail, we can.
Just to talk about that, there's actually, I think, one other person that I think we need to write off, but other than that, everything's all set.
Okay. Yeah, again, so that's an executive discussion if you want to do that. And then basic building projects, extermination, sprinkler systems. We have this ongoing dryer vent issue, so we're trying to resolve that by installing some dryer vents out the sidewall where possible so that we can dryers can vent properly. She notes power washing for the spring. Admittedly, I haven't been down to the property in the past few weeks. I've been busy with other things, so I don't know how important or how in need the power washing is at the property, but if it is, we'll put that on the schedule this summer. The driveway question is, you know, what to do about the driveway is, you know, a lingering question. And we kind of put on the back burner when you guys were working on the Riverwood project and everything else that was going on. So we can, you know, as time allows and as funds allow, we can revisit that. Let's see, compliance, OCAF rent changes, that has to do with the RAD units. So every year, HUD allows for what's called an OCAF rent adjustment, which is essentially HUD's version of a cost of living adjustment to the RAD unit contract rent. So the 18 Section 8 subsidized units. And, you know, it usually falls in the 2 to, you know, 3.5% range. Some years it'll be bigger if there's some inflationary pressures. Like in the past couple of years, it's been a little bit higher than that. In dollar terms, it doesn't amount to a heck of a lot because the rents are so low at those units. So you're talking about 2% on a $800 rent. You know, it doesn't move the needle for us at all, but we are trying to keep up with it. Apartment inspections, some day off requests, vacation requests, and then some supply stuff. So the rest of it is kind of pro forma stuff.
Rick,
So,
this is Wendy again. Do
yes.
you, because Amy's not there, do you happen to have any dates of when inspections would be done? Like sprinklers in, mill and/or
Let's
bug people
see.
in 1,
So
2, and 3?
she's got extermination May 8th and 9th. And then August 7th and 8th.
August?
For extermination, yeah.
Yep, for extermination. And then sprinkler system inspections, next inspection is April 21st.
Okay. And that's just for the mill. Okay. Thank you. That's
You're
very
welcome.
helpful.
Sure.
Any other, because there were the HUD inspections in 1 and 2, is that still going on, or is there anything
Yeah, so
going to happen in mill, do you know?
they did inspections for phase 2 because we have what's called our management and occupancy review coming up. And as a part of that, they will look at only the 18 units in phase 2. So we did a pre-inspection of those, but that's the only inspection we'll do of the units associated with that review, because that's all they'll look at.
Okay. All right. So
I
it's
just have a
the,
general question. Are there, all the RAD units are up the hill, and these are all tax credits here where I am in one?
Correct. All the RAD units are in phase 2.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. And that's the same over at Canaan, right? They have one building that's RAD and the other that's tax credit.
Well, yes, except in Canaan Parish, they don't call it RAD. It's just Section 8, but it's effectively the same thing. Yes.
Okay. How does one get in on that? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you
I
gotta get
mean,
in line.
when you're talking $800, man. I mean,
Yeah.
It's it.
where can sign me up, Rick?
Well, if you don't like the paperwork you have now, imagine 12 times that.
Yeah.
And then if you like, the line is a couple of years, more than a couple of years. Yeah. Okay.
we'll be dead first, all of us.
I hope not.
Okay, so that
Well,
was
it's a long list and long line, right?
Yeah, so that was the property report, and then, I included the budgets. Obviously, we're only in March here, so budgets aren't out of whack at all as of this time of the year. Interestingly, one of the things, and I'm going to follow up the meeting with an email to all of you about this, showing you the information, but for mill apartments, we actually have, as a result of the audit, which I got yesterday, distributable cash. And so we have to, so what we'll have to do is I have to go and review the cash flow waterfall in the operating agreement with M&T Bank, now was People's Bank originally, because we'll have to make a distribution to them as a percentage of that total. And then the balance of it, if you decide to distribute it, would go from mill to Hank. So, it's just a question of whether you want to do it or not, or if you only want to do partial, whatever it is you want to do.
So like when we get to our stuff such as like the elevator and all of those other sort of things, is that allowable internal transfer, or does it have to leave that LLC, come up to Hank, and then go back down to the others?
No, I don't. I don't think you're required to distribute it. I think you have, it's distributable in accordance with your operating agreement, but so you'll have to do it to your investor partner, M&T, but I don't know the answer to the question of whether you must take the distribution to Hank or whether you can opt to leave it in. I think you can opt to just leave it in if you wanted to do that. But I'll try to find out the answer to that. I'll ask the accountant that question.
Well,
But
we
then-
know
but-
that, I
But
mean, you guys, of course, know that we've had a lot of time on deferred maintenance type stuff and some couple little capital projects and all of that. And so, before we go distributing, then probably a good idea to use that if we can, but obviously you're part of the audit. I'm sorry, Peggy, I think I stepped on you.
I was just wondering, would we have to use it for mill if it is generated by mill? Or by moving it to Hank, would we be able to use it for any of the 3?
Yeah, I think
If I were an investor, I'd want it to be used where it was generated.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it goes to if it goes from Mill to Hank, I think at that point Hank can decide to do with it what they want. I don't believe it would be necessary to only spend it on Mill. And because the property effectively, even though it's 3 properties, runs as one, if you were to do the parking lot as an example, you were going to repave the parking lot, you wouldn't repave just the Mill section. You know, you would repave the whole parking lot.
Mhm.
And I don't think you would get any pushback from your investors with that.
Like the elevators, like Mill doesn't have elevators, right?
Correct.
So we can't do elevator repair if it's Mill money, but if it's Hank money, we could.
Well, and the other thing to look at, and again, probably going up to Hank and creating this at Hank, but making sure that we've got truly adequate reserves for all maintenance and stuff and deferred maintenance, and we're planning on replacing the roofs. Again, I mean, here you are, you blink and all of a sudden you're 20 years in on a 30-year roof, and it's like, oops.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
can
I
look at all
think
that.
I think that, you know, we did do the capital needs assessment, if you recall, and it required, if you follow that capital needs assessment, it requires big money contributions over the years. So if you weren't going to spend that money in short order, I would suggest that it go into the replacement reserve account for purposes of roof replacement, or, you know, siding or window, whatever is on that capital needs assessment, you know, things like the water heater project we did, Bernie, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Again, good news.
Yeah,
That's a plus.
yeah.
How much are we talking about?
156,000.
Oh, that's not that much.
Whoa.
Well,
Better than
beat-
nothing.
beats the heck out of
Yeah.
going to the bank and asking for an extra 20.
Beats a stick in the eye.
That's
Yeah.
for sure.
All
Okay.
right. That's the Millport side. Any other questions on that?
Don't think so.
Okay,
Well, thank you for the dates from Wendy
you're welcome.
and the info on the heating is in the 3-year thing, because that was interesting to know how it came about.
Yeah, that was really great. Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome.
Okay. Go ahead, keep on going.
Sure. Canaan Parish, Chandrita, I see you. Do you want to run through your report quickly?
She there?
She's muted.
Well, hey, she might be doing something.
Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
Oh, hey, Chandrita.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Oh, hi.
Rita.
Hi. Hi, Miss Calitri. How are you? Hi, Wendy.
Hi.
Good,
Hi.
good, Chandrita. Thank you.
All right, for Canaan Parish, we have 5 vacancies now. We just have an applicant that is here at the moment. I'm finishing up with her. We're trying to release her in probably on Monday, pending everything gets approved. And the other applicant, this is the North Building, we have to get her out of her housing property by the end of the month, 31st, if her manager will let her out by the 31st. If not, it'll be on the 15th, because HUD is not paying both properties. So she's one that's already an existing resident in a public housing, so we have to wait to have them move her out before we even move her in. So that's something that we're working on with Southwood Square in Stanford. That's where she is, and that's for the N building. So one resident is in a public housing unit and one can move in as soon as we get our paperwork approved. So that's for the vacancies. And then for the South building, we have the other S407 is a unit transfer. We're transferring this internally with a resident that's already here that has a voucher that has a 2-bedroom and now going into a 3-bedroom. And the other ones are already pre-leased. We're just getting their documents in order because we had them before, but we just need to update paperwork as in pay stubs and bank statements for them, because they were there initially from actually November, December, before the flood happened. And then moving right along down to for
Chandrita,
buildings.
Chandrita, I
Can
have
you
a
hear me?
question. What does PBV stand for?
Project-based voucher.
Okay, got it.
That's the same thing as Section 8, but it means
Right.
that.
That's for the
inside
north
the
building, right?
unit. Yeah,
Okay,
inside the building versus having a regular voucher.
got it.
Okay, and then also we have for AR, we do have people that have been paying since we start sending out these letters and having the notice to quits delivered. We have a lot of people on repayment agreements, and then we have one resident in particular who's going to receive monies weekly versus monthly due to the government, because they used to give us bulk checks. They're gonna have to give us the checks in smaller doses, like every other week until she's paid off. And the next project is the building projects with the windows. We're working on a plan of action to resolve this window issue. And I know that there's been a couple of emails going back and forth to settle that. We also have the radon, which is pending for HUD approval. That was attached to the report. We did have one of the representatives on site on Thursday regarding the radon manometer. That's the device that was used for the pressure. He said that he had the wrong device to actually measure the airflow. So he's going to be coming back next week to do it again, to test the airflow again. He didn't have the right. That was from Landroff. S110 actually moved back into her unit already. So she's happy now. That was our flood victim. So she's in her unit now, and we're gonna be turning those units over. And we had the inspections for the HCV units. We did have a new inspector who did fail 3 of the units based on the sink stopper, which usually, like I said, when we have the inspectors here, they let us fix anything on the spot and we don't fill our units. So I did talk to him and he said, yeah, okay, I get it. We showed him the lay of the land. Like anytime we have inspections, we have a good rapport with Housing Authority. They don't fail anything basically with us. They'll go, oh, fix it right then and there and sign off that it's fixed. So we haven't since repaired those units, and they'll be back out next week. They didn't give us a date yet, so we'll be waiting for the re-inspections for those.
Was
And
this something, is this like one of those stoppers, like you push
Right,
down, it stops and then it springs back up?
Right, and like I said, when we go with them, we show him how, because it's hard to like pull up, so he just did it automatically fell because it wasn't a smooth transition to like pull it up. So that was one of the reasons, because it was kind of tight to pull up, but he said himself, like, if this was installed, he felt that it was installation, the way it was installed, it should be much smoother. But Aziz has since fixed them, and now they're like a little, he added another like latch to it to make it a little smoother. So when they come out, they'll just be smooth to come up. It was a little hard to see that, because when you don't use that sink, it's basically in the second bathroom, because some of the residents just use one bathroom, and the half bathroom they don't even use, so they don't even go in that sink, so it's kind of stiff. So we filled those units, but he passed the other ones after we had that talk. So we shouldn't be getting any failed units.
I'm just wondering whether that's, because they're new sinks and new stoppers relatively, so whether it's a user problem or it's a
Well, he
choice
did
of
make that
stopper problem.
comment. He said it, but
Yeah,
that's something else, so.
okay.
But we did fix it, so we'll be back out next week to do it. And what I'm doing now is prepping for this MOR. It's next Wednesday and Thursday. Reviewing the files, making sure everybody's signed. They're gonna pick 6 of the 60 files, 6 of the files that we have. Because it's 60 units, they usually do 10%. And we know that they'll do at least 1 new move-in and 1 previous move-out. So those are 2, and the other 4, it'll be randomly selected, so we don't know what those units are. And we do have Shayna here helping. She started last week, so she's helping me with reviewing the files and going over paperwork, and also now meetings with some residents to have them sign some things too. So that's it for Canaan Parish. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, so I neglected to mention, and I should have, we hired a new person. Shayna Seed is her name, and she is working as the recertification specialist and working with Chandrita and Amy in the same way that Myra and Anna did in the past. So she's new as of the last few weeks, and she's going to be spending the first few weeks at Canaan Parish getting herself acquainted there, and then she'll switch over and spend several weeks at the Millport properties and get herself acquainted there, and then share time between the two after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Questions?
And then again, on the financial side, we submitted the budget again in the beginning of the year. Canaan Parish is on track financially. And I have the draft audit for Canaan Parish here, not the final, but based on the draft audit, we're going to have distributable cash there as well, which we'll do the same thing. We'll put it through the cash flow waterfall. So once we have that final, I'll do that calculation for you and send it out. And that's more substantial. That's going to be more like probably 450 to 500,000 split between Hank and New Canaan neighborhoods.
We do have to, there is one issue to bring up on that we'll primarily deal with in executive session, and we ought to invite Bob in on that one too. That may affect that a little bit, but.
I think he left the meeting. Do you mean to text
You
him?
left.
Yeah,
Well, we won't invite him then. Good thing there's another member from housing from New Canaan Neighbors who happens to be here in order to participate. Would have thought that would be a good idea.
No.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I know
and then-
we'll Bob
and
in
then-
later under that one, but we'll deal with that under executive session.
Right, and then I know you have Peggy's been working on the window project at Canaan Parish, which is a whole big to-do, so.
Exactly.
Okay,
Any other questions on Canaan Parish? All right, we actually talked a tiny bit, and we'll just before we close out of public session, I will just talk Riverwood for a quick second. We talked a little bit informally at the beginning. We keep we're muddling along. We're slowly filling back up. We're hitting the right rental season now. Greystoneers being able to they're starting to get their feet wet and be able to dig in. They're doing a realtor open house next in 2 weeks. I'm actually speaking to the realtors board tomorrow, and we'll make sure that they know about that. I'm just telling them about Riverwood. Don't they, sure enough, we're finding little maintenance things that across 100 units, common maintenance things end up blowing your budget out a little bit, but in general, financially, we're fine. No crisis or anything there. Just, it's not as lucrative as we would have hoped, and it won't be until we end up filling up the rest of the units. Although we did get good news that David was able to recategorize the floodplain, which is humongous. That saves us over $30,000 a year in fees for insurance. And then our pilot program for the payment in lieu of taxes kicks in soon, and that'll again dump some of our real estate taxes too. So again, stuff continues on, and we'll see where we go. Tim, did I miss any other important things I missed?
no, unfortunately I couldn't make the leasing meeting today, but that would be what I would be bringing up on. But I think you hit the things that certainly in the last week came up.
I know that one thing that New Canaan neighborhoods that I expected Bob to stay on here, but as far as we're not looking at needing New Canaan neighborhoods money at this point, the grant. At what point do we give them a warning that it may be needed for operations?
And the reality is I don't think we need it now, and we likely won't need it. It's the project because of how Fannie forces the project to be financed. There is a lot of slack. Now we're using up almost all of it, but I don't think we've crossed over that marker yet between using the slack and needing additional cash.
Yeah, because I know they have a board meeting next week, so they'll be asking, and so.
Bob, am I correct? Not Bob. Tim, my view of the financials is something along that way too. We're still cash flowing positive. it's nothing that and even if we are off a little bit, then, our Hank money should be able to cover the amounts that we're off.
Yeah, absolutely. David did a deeper dive on some
Yep.
of the, the first 4+ months now of operations.
Mhm.
And we're slightly behind the pro forma,
Yep.
but not in a way that concerns him. I think we're keeping up with the accruals attributable to the second mortgage or the second position in the capital structure. So he isn't concerned right now. He's not raising any red flags. And from what I can tell, we got February's results about a week ago, and it's steady. We aren't, and as you just made reference to, it's been 2 weeks now since we had kind of a surprise that were capital oriented. So that's good news too. After a spate of heating equipment problems.
Okay. Anything else for public meeting? Seeing as none, do we have a motion to move to executive?
I make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. We're now
right.
recording.
Sounds good. We finished with executive session. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
I make a motion.
Second?
Second.
Perfect. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye.